My name is Era, and I'm the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tamil Creator. I'm your host, and today we have a special guest all the way from LA, Himalesh Kumar. Someone that I've known for a couple of years now. Actually, when my wife and I took our first trip to LA, we actually crashed at his beautiful waterfront pad that now he sadly moved on from, but we'll kind of get into that a bit later. But Himalesh is the founder and CEO, or was the founder and CEO of an LA-based startup called Tapdn, spelled Tapdn. It was founded back in 2009, and he had partnered with Cort, or C-O-R-T, which is a Berkshire Hathaway company. And then he got acquired, or his company got acquired 10 years later in June of 2019. So super interesting journey from beginning to end. And this company, when he created it, was the first ever platform to kind of bring together everything workplace IoT, so Internet of Things sensor under one platform. So I'm really excited to kind of chat with Himalesh and kind of share, the things I've learned about him with you guys. So instead of me just talking, let me get Himalesh to, speak about himself, his upbringing. It's super interesting because a lot of tech founders come from engineering backgrounds, but Himalesh actually did not. And that's what I also found super interesting. So Himalesh, why don't you tell the people a bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You make me sound so interesting. So so let me a background. So I was born in Sri Lanka. My mom is Sri Lankan. My father is Indian from Andhra Pradesh. So I lived both in Sri Lanka as well as India. And then we were one of the few fortunate people to get sponsored in 1980. I'm dating myself now. 1985, and we were able to come to the U.S. to Los Angeles, and we've been here ever since. I have an elder sister, 6 years older than me, and now I shuttled between both San Francisco and then Los Angeles now.
And why don't you tell the folks kind of what you did in school? Because I feel like a lot of people feel like to start something tech-based, I feel like the world has evolved where you don't really need to be super technical anymore to start a tech company. So why don't you share a bit about that as well?
Yeah, actually, one thing that speaks on that is I think most immigrants have a thread of I would say that similarities, right? A lot of differences where they come from and so forth, but one thing is always to have a better life, right? So your parents or you made some huge sacrifices to get, whether it be in Los Angeles or California or in Toronto or wherever you are in the world, right? And it's always to have a better life. And I think for me, that was instilled even at a young age. And it was really like a chip on my shoulder, I would say, that they showed me the comparison of the contrast of where I was coming from and where I am now. And I always, my world, including my schooling, was colored by this othering effect of okay, well, I have to do better. I have to do good for my family, for myself, my children and my children's children, and everyone that I left behind in India and Sri Lanka, people that unfortunately passed away, or people who just couldn't come out, right? So it's that coloring. And I think for growing up in California, it's going to LAUSD, which is our high school district here, was interesting, and that actually speaks a lot to my later years, both in college as well as how I became an entrepreneur. You as an immigrant are asked to do better than your parents. You're asked to do better than people who came before you, so you can help your local community, your global community, your friends and family back home, as well as, of course, your immediate self and your family. And you do this by how, you study hard, and, you become either a doctor, a lawyer, engineer. And that's kind of like this pinnacle. That's like the gold standard of, of being successful. Right. And it's almost like that blueprint that we all follow, no matter what culture you come from. If you're an immigrant, that's what you follow. You go to school, go to college. And for me, it was a little different. Unfortunately for me, I had a learning disability, and I was dyslexic, or still am dyslexic. And I don't know how it is in Canada, but in the U.S., at least at that time, this is a while ago, things have definitely changed now for the better. Was that there's a spectrum of how you are taught, and if you don't fall inside of that spectrum, you're outside that spectrum. In either side, you're definitely othered, and you're, in the more PC way, you're special, or on the non-PC, you're dumb, right? And for me, I just, no matter how much I tried, I couldn't get it, right? And I had to. So with that said, I had to figure out a way to understand everything, whether it be math, science. I was a lot more creative. Right? That's how my mind worked. Having a learning disability, your mind works in a different way, right? I almost don't even call it a disability anymore, because now I'm on the other side. I look at my experiences and realize how that shaped me in my career, how that shaped me, as you were alluding to, not coming from necessarily engineering background, but then actually going into engineering, on a day-to-day basis, right? Why I say that is because you are, especially running a business, you're always confronted with no's, right? No, you can't do this, or no, we're not going to buy this, or no, we're not going to be able to work with you this way. And growing up, I had those same amount of no's because I had a learning disability, and it was, at the time, there was no diagnosis. They couldn't diagnose me as to what I was. There wasn't that even option for me. It was just that you understand this, you don't understand it. It was no, well, then here's plan B. It was, then you're just going to be a failure all your life, and that's what it is. And I had definitely had teachers that put me in that box that, oh, don't spend your time with this person. They won't understand it. They're not going to get it. And then I had teachers on the other side that were just phenomenal, that really helped me, who said, okay, he learns it a different way, so we're going to put time in that. There's something about this kid that I want to put my time into, and I'm forever grateful for those individuals, those teachers. But what it really taught me was how to overcome your no's, and how to overcome your challenges, right? And not to be brittle and let the world kind of shape you as a person, but say, okay, well, here's the problem. I don't know how to actually solve it, but I'm going to attempt to solve the problem. And I remember I would make creative ways to do so. Like, even to this day, I would create patterns in my head. And that was the easier way for me to record, to remember, to regurgitate, to learn. An example, I would genderize, for whatever reason, I would genderize my alphabets and my numbers. And by doing that, and even words, by doing that, I was able to piece together quickly whatever I needed to recall, or whatever I needed to do. And this was like a coping mechanism, right? And the same thing physically, I was able to, when people said no to me, I was able to figure out a way around that no. And that's the same thing would happen, with engineering. Yes, I wasn't an engineer. I didn't learn or go to college for being an engineer, but I could, because of the no's that came about, saying, well, you can't do this, so you're not going to be an engineer. So I had to actually go around that, and I say, okay, well, you don't have to teach me, but I could teach myself, right? And what steps do I need to take to be a better engineer? Product design, architecting, everything from the database all the way to the front. Like, how do you learn that without actually having someone there teaching you how to do it, right? That you may have learned when you were in college. And a part of that also translated into my entrepreneurial spirit, or having that entrepreneurial spirit of, when someone says no, how do you receive it, and how do you overcome it, and how do you process that no? And that's why I always call it my superpower, being dyslexic and having a learning disability, it showed me another way that most people who weren't dyslexic or had a learning disability would take for granted, right? It made them, it othered them, than not just me, but in doing so, it gave me a whole new world on how to look at opportunity, and for that, I'm forever grateful.
You said a lot there. First of all, before we kind of go on, I got to give a special shout out to Anishka J, who is Himlesh's cousin, who kind of connected us before I forget. But yeah, I think you said two things there. One was how to get around the nose. I feel like that's like the daily business of being an entrepreneur is like people will say no, or like there's some kind of annoying thing that's happening that you have to solve. So it's like that's amazing that that's kind of you got practice before you actually have to do it on a daily basis. And number two, the education system, where you said like there is no knowledge or like plan B for folks that didn't learn the typical way. Like you probably saw like that cartoon of like, these animals sitting around a tree and like, that I don't know if you've seen it before, but it's like the teacher or whatever saying, we're going to measure who the best student is by who can climb this tree best. And it's like, a fish and like a snake and like all these different animals and like
Yeah,
obviously like a monkey's there. So it's like,
yeah.
I feel like the education previously, and it's slowly changing, but I think the future
Mhm.
of education will change because of it, is that different people, learn differently. Like for me, I was always
Yeah,
very shy. I always had all these questions. I learned by asking questions. But I
yeah,
felt like in a classroom, if I asked those questions, whether it was real or perceived, um, or in my mind, I felt like people would think I was dumb. So I didn't want to ask those questions.
mm,
But like
yeah,
now when like YouTube came, or like, when I went to university, I actually never went to class. I actually just ended up learning on my own because I was like,
yeah,
I can't learn the way I want to learn. So I might as well just learn on my own. And then I
yeah,
would go and kind of ask in private to like the TA or somebody all my questions. So it's just
yeah,
really interesting you kind of brought that up because I just, triggered stuff in my head of like the
yeah.
same kind of memories. So
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to a friend who also is an entrepreneur, and he had a learning disability, and then he had three other friends that happened to be entrepreneurs, and they had a learning disability. And I just started looking around and started noticing all these individuals that who became entrepreneurs that had a learning disability of some kind, or on the spectrum of some kind. And I think it's interesting because I think that when you grow up with those no's, you're more at ease, right? Because you understand that, okay, that's a no, but that's not really no. I'm going to get around it, right? And then you create these ways to navigate and maneuver through it. And entrepreneurs, I feel like, especially if you've gone through that at an early age, you'll be more successful as an entrepreneur as you get older, because that'll be more familiar, that's your turf, right? So it's funny how you see a lot of entrepreneurs that didn't have the option to a traditional going to traditional colleges, or graduating and then getting into like a normal job, because they couldn't get it, right? So they had to actually create their own company, right? For me, I was lucky because um, one of the things that my mom and dad said was, "Hey, we just want you to go to college," right? And I worked my butt off to be able to get into school, and I actually ended up going to UCLA and graduating, and that was such a blessing. But I know plenty of folks that, and this is really not a endorsement not to go to college to anyone listening, but I know plenty of folks that didn't go that route, and they're way more successful than I could ever have imagined that they would have been if they did go that route. So yeah, so that's super awesome.
this episode is sponsored by nobody. That's right, nobody. So if you could be kind enough to hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me. Let's get into tapped in. So like,
Yeah.
I think when we were talking, you kind of mentioned this idea, and like I think I met you when I think you just got your first round of funding from Cort, or I think it was from Cort,
Yeah.
which is amazing. Kind of like describing your journey. It's crazy that you kind of started this company and then you got a successful exit. But before we get there, how did you even come up with this idea? I feel like I don't know if it's random, but like maybe there's some kind of background to it.
Yeah. 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 I always say that the for me at least, I feel like the ideas that are the ones that are really sticky, or the ideas that you confront or your friends confront on a daily basis, or people confront on a daily basis, even if it's maybe not your exact group. And from there, you cultivate that, and everything that I've ever done in the past has always stemmed from that. So actually, Tapdn started as a mobile payment company. So this is prior to Apple Pay and Google Pay, and there were some companies out here in the U.S. that were doing so. Prior to all of that, we wanted to solve. I've always had an affinity to solving big problems. I just thought it was the coolest thing to be able to look at something that's this Goliath and say, okay, well, how do I get around it? And mobile payment was one of those things. But sooner than later, actually, after we started it, what we thought was, yeah, mobile payment is cool, but what's even cooler is identity management, because it includes mobile payment as well as a whole host of other things like utilization, both for a person versus also a room or an object like a desk or whatever it may be. Having access to a remote area that's all credentialed, and then of course, with your credential, you have all these host of things connected to it. One being your payment, your credit cards and your bank accounts and so forth. And so when we started with mobile payment. Soon after, like most companies do, I think a lot of companies, they pivot, right? They pivot to what they feel the market wants, right? And we pivoted early on, and we had to do everything from not just the software side, the back end, the front end, but also hardware side, creating sensors from scratch, right? Or integrating with existing sensors. So it was super hard to do, but it all stemmed from organic response from the market on us saying, hey, this is cool, but what about this? Did you guys think about this? And we're like, yeah, it's actually a great idea. And then that's how we kind of cultivated our path forward into what we are doing now.
And what was your revenue model? How long did it take you guys to go from idea to product market fit and actually generate revenue?
Yeah, that's a good question. So early on, we were lucky because when we first started, even in the payment model, we were able to we were revenue positive, or we were able to be revenue flowing at that time. I wouldn't say it's positive, or we were definitely not profitable, but we saw the market, we saw clients, they were willing to pay for the product. And that took about 3 years. So normally, it takes about 2 years where, a company can either sink or be successful. For us, it took about 3 years so we can start seeing revenues coming in from the start. And then when the big changes occurred when we started working with Cort and Berkshire Hathaway, that's when things really pivoted, really opened up, because we were a small company. They were this giant that already had clients, and that opened up, taking our existing technology and then really putting it into their client base, and adding value to their existing service lines, and that opened up, and that happened from day one. We had revenues. Within 6 months of 6 to 8 months of actually talking to them, to the time that we actually had our first client with them, doing what we're doing now with socialization, that was such a blessing for us to have. But yeah, so the first round was about 3 years in, and then when Berkshire came in, the huge round, or when Cort came in, that was about 8 months into our relationship.
And how did you get connected with Cort?
Yeah, that's actually a great story. Well, at least I feel it's a great story. Maybe it's not the best story. So around this time, I started the company. I brought in an individual that I'm friends with to this day. Actually, a couple of individuals I'm friends with to this day. And during this time, I always say, on the side note, I always say that we're always living in an equation of change. Like, things are always changing around us, whether we actually see it or not, right? And it's always not to be married to or settling with the status quo and where it is. And I say that because after this event that happened, so one of my founders actually decided to leave the company, And that was hard because someone that you had a great relationship with, saying, hey, I don't know if this is actually going anywhere, right? And we spent some time in this. I don't know if it's actually going where we need to go. It's time for at least for me to leave, right? And that put so much stress, and not only the fact that I had to put on his hat and do his job, because we didn't have the money to hire more people, but also to be able to say, hey, am I spending my time wisely? Should I be doing something else? If this person that I look up to, that actually is super smart, smarter than me in every way, if he's saying no, right, then should I be, am I wasting my time here? So a lot of question marks, a lot of doubts came about it. The one thing I would say during that time, what sparked in me was not being married to change and saying change is okay. That, yeah, this is a huge event that's happening, but you have to be okay with it proceeding the way it is and seeing where the cards lay, and being adapted to that change. And then actually doubling down, right? And that's what I did. I actually doubled down and said, okay, no, this is going to go somewhere. I'm going to make sure. And, majority of the team left. I was just left with like one other person. And so we had to kind of rebound, to recapitalize the company. So go back and find funding for the company, because we were at the time, we were like at negative like 30,000 in our account. And I was like, okay, I don't have enough money to make payroll. I don't even have money to put gas in the car tomorrow. What am I going to do, right? And so we were able to like just roll with the punches, stay gritty as possible. And during that time, I met an individual that actually we over the years have become friends, who actually was working with Cort and Berkshire Hathaway. And he saw us a while ago in a trade show that we were at, and then he liked the product. He just out of the blue called me, and he said, hey, what are you guys working on? I told him, hey, nothing's changed. We're working on these things. And he said, you know what, you really need to talk to some of the guys in my office, because I really feel he believed in the product enough and the company and myself enough to know that we can make something work. He introduced me to the right people. And I will say that at Cort, just had superbly innovative people that knew that this had legs, right? Because this was, early on IoT, right? So people didn't know really where IoT would fit. The CEO, Jeff Pedersen, just knew that it kind of clicked, and people that I'm working with to this day, who's director of the company, or at least that division, just got it. They understood it, and they knew that it was going to go somewhere. So I was really embraced. So that was such a blessing for us to be, or to be embraced, open, hands wide open to cultivate the relationship and then take us to the next level. And that's what happened. That took a while. It wasn't instantaneous. It took us almost another year and a half or so of just going back and forth with them and finding the right product fit. And once we did, then everything just blew up.
And then you ended up raising money with them as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. So with their wisdom, they, being a Berkshire company, what they wanted to do was test out the waters before they kind of jump in, right? And so they actually, we had a relationship, a funding relationship, that they helped us get to where we needed to be, so we can get the product the third iteration of the product off the ground, second iteration of the product off the ground, to fit the clients that we were talking with. And then shortly after that, once they saw traction, then that relationship started to change towards something that looked like what it ended up, which was an acquisition.
Yeah, so you kind of led into my next question, which is like, a lot of people, and I think it's like, you see all the successful stories in the media, and like obviously I know your story and some others, but it's so hard to kind of do this whole thing of, you have this idea in your mind, turn it into something real, find paying customers, and then kind of get an acquisition. What was that process like in terms of what you could share around, like,
Mm-hmm.
how the idea of even like an acquisition came to fruit? Like, were you looking for it, or did it just kind of come out of a natural discussion? Tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was, I would say that other companies we were talking with and so forth before Berkshire. There were, and then of course when Berkshire came along, I had already gone through that route of understanding who we were, what our valuation was, what the next steps would be, and if we didn't find funding through institutional funding, what would that look like, and for us to just kind of stay above water. So it was a lot of prep work prior to that, but during that we were lucky because it's a great home. It allows us to do so much. Of course, there's being their books are strong, their clientele is strong, the quality of customer service was great. So for us, it made sense to work with them because we knew that they were a great company. They're very honorable and very sophisticated people that helped us kind of understand the climate and the markets that we were getting into. With or without them, they were still open for that. So that was awesome. But during that step in that process, and I think, it happened so many different ways for different companies, even other acquisitions that I was part of or worked with. You have this kind of like a distress acquisition, and you have acquisition that there was like a good fit with both companies. And then there's, companies that's actually going out to actually see an exit and whatever that exit looked like, right? So for us, and there's a myriad of other ways too, but for us, there was such a great relationship. We relied on them heavily on our sales part because they brought in a lot of that legitimacy because of being a Berkshire Hathaway company. And so for us, it made sense for us to be a part of them. They started talking about what that would look like. And then from there, it was just getting the numbers together, right? To make sure that everyone felt that the deal was great itself. And so it was very organic. So all that to say that it was a very organic sale. It wasn't forced or felt pressured. It was just like, hey, okay, are we in a place? I always say we were dating for a while, right? When they invested or helped us fundraise, we were dating for a while. They looked at our product. They wanted to check all the boxes, cross all the T's, dot all the I's. Being a Berkshire Hathaway company, they want to check everything. They looked at our technology. They looked at our customer service. They looked at our onboarding and said, okay, these guys have, they did a good job from start to finish on building the company where it needs to be. And now if we were to take it on, we can really explode it. And so they did that due diligence, close to about 2 years prior to us even being acquired. But when the acquisition talk started coming, it happened very quick, meaning the conversation had very quick. And then to get from the conversation to where we actually ended up was somewhat quick. It was about 4 months or so. But all throughout it was, I always felt like it was the best place for Tapdn to end up. They would grow it, and growing this for so many years, it was definitely like it was my baby, and so I wanted to make sure that it had a home where the technology could be used in the right ways, and it would bring value to its clients, and that's exactly what they did. So it was a very organic relationship that ended to an acquisition.
Did you know that every time you left a 5 out of 5 review for this podcast, a Tamil parent lets their child pursue a career in the creative arts? Okay, that's probably not true, but if there's a chance that it is, do you really want to jinx it? Leave a review. Do it for the young creative in you. Once this acquisition got completed, you kind of got through all the due diligence, legal work's done. What's the first thing you did when you completed it? Like, were you like refreshing your bank account, or like, were you like, let me buy, something nice? Like, what did you do?
I went out and bought 4 Ferraris. No. It was, well, definitely I celebrated with my friends and family. It was something that was a milestone for me. I took a walk. I remember right after that, I took a walk by myself, and I thought about the years all the years that happened, previous to that, all the individuals that helped me. I try to take an account of every downside, every challenges, or all the challenges, all the naysayers, all the individuals that helped me along the process of overcoming, and took a glance of everything to kind of heal. Because being an entrepreneur, right, you're there's going to be days where you're, just stressed out, because you, unlike having a 9 to 5, you walk away from it and come home and you're like, okay, well, work's work, and it's apart from the rest of your life. But being an entrepreneur, it follows with you, it tracks with you. You're always thinking about it. You're always, stressed out, or you're always, and the good side of it is you're always happy too, because you're doing something amazing and passionate. And for me, it was healing of the events that were really detrimental to my growth, and it was also celebrating in ways that I felt that you would never, I would have, even at that time, never thought I would have been able to succeed, that I was able to do that. And I just thank God for everything He led me from the very first inkling of the conversation I had with myself of, hey, this might be a good idea, to that exact moment. And then right after that, I went to the bank with a friend of mine, and I got a printed check, meaning a receipt that I have to this date. So it was just like, it was taking this idea, walking through the entire idea, getting to a part where that idea actually manifested itself into physicality. That to me was just like, that was the beauty of it. That was like the celebration of it. And I went directly to my mom and dad's house, and we popped a bottle of champagne and just relaxed and just talked about all the stress I caused them. So yeah, it was fun.
It was a 10-year journey. I mean, I think a lot of people don't talk, and like you said, like even as a fellow entrepreneur, like I haven't achieved your level of success, but it's like it is a constant. It's like this constant tension between stressed about like, will I make it to another day? Will I be successful?
Mm-hmm.
But also
Right.
on the other side, it's like, oh, you see all the benefits of the choices you make, like flexibility. You don't answer to anybody but yourself. You're accountable to yourself. So there's pros and cons, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just like everything you said is, just something I can reflect on as well. And you kind of mentioned God in the sense. So, one of the things, for those of you listening, like why I love talking to Himalesh is there's not that many Tamil Christian entrepreneurs out there for me to chat with. And so it's nice for me to kind of chat with him. And, if you kind of heard his voice over the last, 20, 30 minutes, you might notice kind of how soothing it is and how, he's a very, I would say Himalesh is a very humble person given kind of the success and things he's kind of accomplished. And, I can probably guess it's because of his faith and kind of upbringing. But, why don't you talk a bit about kind of, the impact of your faith in kind of this long, 10-year journey?
Yeah. So it was a long journey. I think for me, one of the best points of this journey was the ability to get closer to God, right? Because you lean, when you go through adversity, right? You either crumble or you lean upon something greater than you, right? And you track with that, in that journey, you track with it. And to see, in my view, the hand of God moving things out of my way or putting things in my way. So it's not always yeah, everything's going to work out perfectly just because you're religious, or you believe that there's a higher power. There's times where things are placed in your way, and only later you find out that was to actually move you in another direction that ultimately brought you to some sort of success or some sort of a benefit. And so for me, it was that journey of like finding where God's hand was moving me, and why. And like I said, in that walk, there was a lot of healing in that walk for me. And it was because there are times when you question your faith, you question yourself. I question myself a heck of a lot. You question that, hey, is this ever going to work? And there's nothing around you that can say, no, don't question yourself. Even if your friends and family say, don't question yourself, don't question God, don't question, your pursuit, your strength. You come to a point where there's nothing left and it's just you, and you have to be okay with whatever happens after that, right? And not allowing the world to make you a brittle person, right? And saying, I'm going to continue and do it, knowing that for me, I believe that there was a higher power that was taking me to a inevitable success. And when you didn't see it, and in fact, the times where I have to convince myself was in the hardest times, right? Where things are not working out, and you have to say, well, is this the last day, right? Because there were times where you won't know if you would go another day or another 2 days even, right? Because so many things are happening to all, mile a minute. But I always say that I had to go through what I had to go through with Tapdn, because it really made me super gritty. It allowed me to see almost this other side. It was similar to growing up, having a learning disability, right? It made me a lot smarter, made me a lot more just gritty, and just a lot more passionate about what I was doing. The same thing happened here when with Tapdn. There were times where I didn't know what was going to happen, and so to continue, I had to rely on my faith in God to say, look, I'm going to give this to you. I don't know if tomorrow's going to exist. I don't know if the company's going to be around. I don't know if we're going to get anywhere, but I'm going to give it to you and let you kind of take that wheel and see what happens. And in that time, you have a lot of questions, you have a lot of doubt, but that's okay. Some people, I feel like, think that, people who are ultra successful, had this, just great intellect, or they had, this leg up, across the rest, right? Which could be the case. I'm not saying it's not. But I think what I find interesting is that everyone who are successful, they all had the ability to be gritty and to be able to say, I'm going to continue no matter all the odds against me, right? For me to have that ability, it was my faith. I needed that faith to ground me enough to know that there is a next day, whether I see it or not. In the hardest and darkest times, there is a next day. And I always go back to that. I think it's the that YouTube verse. Before a child is born, no, there's always pain before a child is born, right? And so that it was like that for 10 years for me. And then finally, once we got, it was closer to like 9 years or so, when we actually had the acquisition. So at that point, it was a lot of just tension I had to release and let go. And just like, thank God that he saw me through the entire thing, to the point where I can go to the bank and can get that receipt and say, pop that champagne. So yeah, it definitely was a humbling experience, and it taught me so much, to this point, that it makes me see things, every part of my life, not just my business life, but every part of my life in a very different way.
Love it. Love the answer. So we talked a lot about work, but what does Himalesh outside of work do? Like, what do you like to do for fun?
Oh man, it's so crazy now. So I'm planning a wedding with my fiance, Priya Pratap, and getting, and also we're buying a house, or we already actually bought a house. Now we're renovating the entire house. We're basically demolishing the entire house and rebuilding it. So that takes up a lot of time. So there really isn't much time these days to really do anything other than the wedding planning and getting the house situated. The one good thing I would say, or not, it's a lot, there has been good things even in COVID, is that it allowed us to go old school. And Priya and I now are potting with my parents in LA. And that has been a blessing as our house gets ready. Being here and spending time with my mom and my dad, that's super fun. We, everything from eating chicken curry and trying out new dishes and just watching movies and just hanging out with my dad. And now it's almost like 7 months now that we've been doing this. So that's really we did get a puppy. We got a quarantine puppy. So Kaya. So he keeps us busy with he's like a bundle of energy. So other than that, yeah, that's it. I really, I'm always helping other entrepreneurs, and I'm working on a bunch of different advisory levels with a bunch of different companies. So I fill my time with that. And yeah, that's what I really do for fun.
What's the insecurity that you have?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, I would say, the thing about being in the work that I do, right? It's that when you're scaling, when you're blitz scaling, you're having to make decisions on a rapid fire basis, right? And sometimes you don't have like hours to even sometimes think, or days or weeks to think about it. You just have to make the decision and move on. And I find myself, as soon as I make a decision, my mind, as my mouth is speaking, and my mind is like already insecure about the decision, right? And so making the right decisions for the company, for my, also personally as well. I don't necessarily think I'm the smartest person, but I do think that in acting is failure, right? You have to act, rather. You have to act. And if you don't act, that's definitely failure. And so for me, once I make a decision, a huge insecurity that sometimes it's debilitating sometimes, wondering if it's the right thing or the wrong thing. And I think for entrepreneurs who are listening, right, it's like you make the decision, at least the way I handle it. You make the decision. You should be intimate enough in your company to understand, at least have the right equation to make that decision. And if it's a great decision, great, right? If it's a wrong decision, it's not the end of the world, right? You just pivot, correct it, and operate faster next time, and or make better decisions next time, and go. So yeah, I would say always second guessing my decisions is a super insecurity of mine.
Yeah, I don't normally second to guess my decisions, but it's like the funniest thing that I do. Every weekend on Saturday is like kind of when I'm allowed to, or I allow myself to kind of go crazy with like delivery food, because typically we
Yeah.
like to, and I spend, usually I'm very quick at deciding things. Claudia always tells me, but I spend like an hour at least just sitting there. It's like a life or death thing. It's like, if I just eat this, I'm not going to enjoy this. And it's like, it's crazy. I don't know. It's like the funniest thing, but
I could relate to that, especially if it has something to do with food.
money can be hard to come by, but here's a $100 opportunity for you. Join my free newsletter for free exclusive content and a free chance to win $100 when I hold special draws. Did I mention that it's free? Another topic I want to kind of, naturally kind of get into is just because something I see as a topic that people don't talk about. It's taboo, I would say, is like the topic of money. So just really around, how do you view money? How do you view investing? Actually, what I really want to know first is, did you put some money into Bitcoin when you sold your company? But if not, but like, how do you view money, and how do you view investing?
Yeah, I did put some money into Bitcoin. I did put some money in ADA. Not. I still have that scare. So the one thing I tend to do, and I doesn't necessarily mean that everyone needs to do this, but I always do things when it comes to like my career and stuff, I work on things that I know, things that I feel comfortable in, things that I don't know. I still dabble with it, right? So it's not like I'm gonna put all my money in there and see how it works out. But I definitely did put some money in there. I don't know where. I told myself, don't look at it, just put some money and just walk away. And so I don't know where I am right now. I think from my friends' responses to their investment, we're in an okay space. So yeah. So that's what. Well, I'm sorry. What was the second part of that question?
Oh, investing.
I got excited. I got excited of the Bitcoin. That's the question.
Yeah, like how do you do investing? Like, are you going to are you like comfortable investing? Like, where do you want to put money? Is it like real estate? Is it like, angel
Mhm.
investing? Like, what kind of things are you looking at?
Yeah, so I definitely am putting money in angel investing. So I do provide both, uh, just help companies that are just like coming out. I do help in any financial way I feel I can with them as well. Um, where do I put majority of my time and energy? The stuff that we're working on in my current company, it's pretty cool, and I'm pretty excited about it. AI is what we're doing at the company, and also where I definitely see like 3.0 heading towards that. I think most of everyone now agrees that this is not just a revolution, it's reality. And so I put time and money in companies that are just doing some really cool things and really solving massive problems. That to me really intrigues me, really gets me fired up. In fact, there's a company that I'm working with right now, as of actually of this date of in India, and in Sri Lanka and in other parts of South Asia. The coronavirus is really devastating them. So one of the goals for me was always to leverage my contacts and money and my time and energy on things that for my local community as well as my global community. And so I'm working with a company, Kui Health, that is just super awesome. They're providing healthcare to individuals who can't either afford it or can't get to a hospital or in front of a physician using telehealth. And they have some really cool technology when it comes to looking at vitals, selfie vitals as they call it, and looking at your blood pressure and your blood oxygen, and your blood oxygen is huge when especially for COVID-19, right? So yeah, spending time on AI models, spending both my investment as well as time on AI models is where I definitely look into both my current company as well as new ventures that I'm advising or part of in any way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I know that you like to learn. So like from your learning style, do you like listen to podcasts? Do you listen to books? And if so, what's something that you've kind of either read or listened to that's kind of had an impact on you in the last couple of years?
Yeah, good question. I try to. I have a subscription to Audible, like a lot of people do, and I spend a lot of time just either reading or listening to it. Let's see, what am I listening to right now? Right now, I'm listening to what is it called? Reframing Healthcare by um, Zeev Nurit. I think I'm probably butchering his name. But as far as anything Malcolm Gladwell, I'm all over it. Like I think majority of the world. David and Goliath was a great book. Blink really changed the way I see things and making split decisions. Let's see what else. Crossing the Chasm was great. Life 3.0, being human in the age of AI, by Max Tagmark, I believe. That was cool. I could list out Origin Story, Wealth of Nations, String Theory. There's all these books that really have changed the way I see things. I would just say if you want to learn, which I'm sure everyone here is listening to this podcast, read as much as you can, or or Audible as much as you can. In my case, as far as podcasts go, there's just one podcast that's just like fantastic. It's just, I mean, I recommend it to everyone. It's called The Tamil Creator. It's like the best podcast in the world. So maybe not this episode, but all the other episodes. So yeah, so let's see what else. So How I Built This by Guy Raz is an awesome podcast. Master of Scale by by Reid Hoffman. He's founder of LinkedIn, part of the PayPal mafia. And by the way, his book Blitzscaling, I think is by Chris Yee and Bill Gates, and also by Reid Hoffman. That's a great book to listen to if you're an entrepreneur, or really it doesn't even have to be, you don't even have to be an entrepreneur. It's just a great learning lesson on a bunch of different aspects. Hidden Brain by Shankar Vedantam. That's a great podcast as well. Yeah, and those are the ones that I hit up on a daily or on a weekly basis.
And what's like a piece of advice that you'd give to, your fellow aspiring Tamil creators out there?
That's a good question. I would say, okay, actually, so I have this. So every day, I've listed like quotes that I kind of collect over the years that really have spoken to me. So there's so many different things I could probably say, but today's quote probably rings well. So every day I wake up and I listen to that quote, and I meditate over it. Not this particular quote, but just quotes that I have throughout the year. Today's quote was probably fitting. It was by Churchill, Winston Churchill. Actually, I have it up here somewhere, I think. Yep, here it is. Yep. So success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And I think that really sums up even our conversation today. Stay gritty. Don't let the world make you a brittle person. Make a choice every day, and if needed, even every second, to keep going against all odds. And don't take no for an answer. In fact, I always say there isn't really a true no. There are people that accept no, and there are people who don't accept it. You just got to figure out which one you are. Pro tip: don't accept no's. And so,
and
that's it.
That's a great segue to, the fun part of our podcast, which is a game we call Creator Confessions. So basically, I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions. You're going to just say the first thing that comes to mind, and we're going to try to keep it very brief. So let's do. You ready, Himalesh?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Favorite Tamil food?
Oh, kotha roti.
Something that scares you?
Being on the road when my niece is driving.
Favorite show you're watching?
Dave on FX. It's hilarious.
A place you're itching to travel to after the pandemic is over?
Oh man, that's a good question. I want to go to somewhere tropical. So like I would just say Hawaii or even Sri Lanka, and just to relax. Yeah.
A fellow Tamil creator that you want to give a shout out to?
Ooh, that's a great question. Man, there's so many, and this is gonna get me in trouble because you're gonna be like, why didn't you say me? I'll say Rajiv Nandakumar, and he's doing some pretty cool stuff.
Okay. Favorite childhood memory?
Oh man, let's see. The first thing that comes in my mind. Okay, I think this is not. I remember as a kid walking with my dad when we first got to the U.S. Walking with my dad in Los Angeles when he would take me go get ice cream at Thrifty. Those who know Thrifty ice cream is the best. And we would walk there because we didn't have a car or anything, and sometimes he would carry me there, and walk back. And I remember like just smelling the flowers. It would be at the evening time, and this particular part of the city was like they had these flowers that only bloomed at night, and so that was just really just like seared in my mind. Especially because my dad now is in a wheelchair, so he can't walk. So So yeah, that's one of my favorite memories.
Pet peeve.
Pet peeve. I don't know why, but I think the first thing that kind of came up to mind, maybe it's because of having conversations for work this or today, was I get UI UX. Like if there's something off about it, if it's not pixel perfect, I especially if it's a finished final product, I just can't stand it. I obsess over it day and night. So yeah.
A person or a celebrity that you look up to.
Man, geez, that's a good question. Um, I'll say there's a person I look up to who've really brought me into my own when it comes to business. Joseph J. Nagum, which is my uncle, actually Anushka's dad. There's a lot of people that kind of mentored me along the way. He never gave up on me, and so did none of my family members, especially my mom and my dad. But you know, on the business side, he just a brilliant, soft-spoken person that just very unassuming, that you would never thought that he's a genius. But yeah, who's always supported me along the way. So yeah.
If you knew you're going to die tomorrow, a regret that you would have.
Wow, that's a good question. I would say not investing in Bitcoin, or no. I would say not spending more time. So maybe because of the last answer, not spending more time with my dad when he was able to get around and walk. I think that's a regret that I have time and time. And for anyone who's listening, make time for your family and your friends and all your loved ones, because that's priceless.
A celebrity whose life you'd want to experience for one day.
Probably Beyonce. Yeah, that's a good question, man. These are great questions. First thing that comes to mind, geez, man, I would say probably Elon Musk. I would just want to experience like what his day looks like, because he looks like he's doing a whole heck of a lot of stuff, a lot of creative stuff. So yeah, I would probably say Elon Musk.
You know, that's like the fifth or sixth person that has said that answer. That
Oh
guy
wow.
is a marketing genius. He's in all of our minds.
He used to live in LA. He used to live actually not too far. Now he's in Austin, but his SpaceX is right down the street. So
Mm.
I always, whenever I pass by it, I'm always like, what is this guy up to next?
A PSA you want to leave our audience with.
A PSA, like so, like advice or
Anything, yeah, just anything you want to leave them with, like just your final
okay.
thoughts. Yeah.
Okay, I would say love. I would say, um, you know, I'm consistently on a pursuit to affect as many people's lives as possible. I hope that, you know, everyone lives in this world for a very short period of time. What you do at that time is very important. You know, I find it's not just your money that creates impact, but of course that's a major tool. But what really matters is love in the form of at least of time, because that's definitely priceless. So yeah, if you want to impact or create both local and global change, it's, you know, spend time with the people you love, spend time with the things you love doing, and that would create a lasting legacy.
Great answer. And that's kind of a nice way to kind of wrap up the podcast. You know, thank you, Himalesh, for making time to kind of chat today. If anyone's kind of listening to this and they're kind of inspired by your story and want to connect with you in some way, whether it's mentorship or they want to work with you, or there's some kind of, you know, thing they want to connect with you on, what's the best way to connect with you? Is it LinkedIn, Instagram? Like, what's the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best. I check that more often. So yeah, just connect with me. I'm happy to help in any way I can. A shout out to anyone that is interested in working with. So there's a project called Mitra Project in India right now. I think I alluded to it earlier. That is providing healthcare for individuals that are stuck at home or unable to leave, both in India and also Sri Lanka, and just don't have the finances or the ability to seek healthcare. So if anyone that's interested in being part of it, please reach out. We're always looking for amazing, talented people that can help in that way. And if there's any way that I could help in whatever way that is, please reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Himalesh. And for everyone kind of listening, thank you for listening, and on to the next one.
Thanks for having me.
Question I meant to ask you was, did you get to meet the man himself, Mr. Warren Buffett?
Yes, I did. The Oracle of Omaha. I will say, a funny story, or a kind of really cool story that maybe resonate with some people, hopefully will inspire people, is when I originally started my first company in early in 2002, 2003, with shout out to a friend of mine, Ravi Kumar. We were in LA. He finished college. I was taking a break from college, and we drove across country to his mom and dad's house. And he was staying with me and my mom and my dad, and while we were building this company. And then it was time for him to move back to Chicago. In doing so, we passed by Omaha, and at the time I happened to be reading Warren Buffett's biography. It was like an unauthorized biography about him. And I just thought it would be so awesome and so cool one day to work for him, or work for Berkshire Hathaway. And then lo and behold, fast forward years later, his company acquired my company, and I met him in Omaha, actually. And I don't know if it's the mythology or if it's just like me just high on life at the time, but I just felt like I was getting smarter just standing next to him. Just probably one of the most humble people that I know. Reminds me a lot of my uncle, Joseph Jainagam. Just a very soft-spoken, just very intellectual, just awesome person. And it was just a great time that I'll always remember. And every year we go to Omaha for every May, but obviously with COVID, nothing could happen this year or next year, or last year and this year. But who knows? Maybe next year I'll get to meet him again.